Also at the top of our news again today is Christopher Paul Neal. His family and friends say they are shocked to hear he's a wanted man, that the teacher from Maple Ridge, British Columbia, is a suspect in an international child sexual abuse case. Media reports suggest that Neal was teaching a grade 7 and 8 class in South Korea as part of an exchange teaching English overseas. My next guest is the co-owner of Footprints Recruiting Incorporated, which is billed as the largest teacher placement agency for ESL teachers in the world. His name is Ben Glickman, and he's in Vancouver this morning. Mr. Glickman, thanks for being here.
Sure, no problem.
Christopher Neal, was he one of the people that was part of your agency, sir?
No, ma'am, we did not represent him.
You checked your records, not part of Footprints.
That's right. We looked, and we have no record of him applying through our agency.
We wanted to talk to you today, Mr. Glickman, to just help us understand the screening process when a Canadian or someone overseas should want to go and teach ESL in Asia. So explain to me, I come to you and I want to be posted there. I'm hoping to be posted in a school overseas. What is the process applicants go through?
Sure. Well, the basic requirements to teach overseas are that you have a university degree, a 4-year degree, that you be a native English speaker, and you have a valid passport. If you're teaching in the private sector, which would be a for-profit ESL school, unfortunately at this point there really isn't much of a background check beyond that. I mean, someone would apply through our agency, for example, they would go through our interview process on the telephone for about 30 minutes. And then we would start introducing them to clients. Mr. Neal, from what I've read on the internet, taught in both the public and the private sector.
Right.
In the public sector, which would be like a public elementary school or high school, which I believe he was teaching in, you also have to get a criminal background check as well as letters of reference and a note from a doctor stating that you're in good health. Okay,
so it varies. Private schools to public schools have different standards as far as people coming to arrive. Let's just go back to the screening process. So it sounds pretty basic at the early stages. At what point then, in some of these cases, do the criminal background checks kick in?
At this point, it's an industry-wide regulation that criminal background checks are only required to teach in the public schools. However, we self-regulate, and we are in the process of ensuring that all of our applicants going overseas will have a criminal background check done by a reputable agency, regardless of whether they're teaching in the public or private sector.
Oh, so you do this of your own volition?
Well, we are starting this. I mean, obviously this is a real wake-up call, something we've been debating for a while, but we are moving towards that this week, in fact.
Interesting change as a result of this story we're talking about potentially. So what does the background check, the criminal background check, involve? How specific does it get?
Well, at this point, there are some problems with it. I mean, basically, there is no one specific document that is required to teach in the public schools. It can be, for example, if you're from the States, it can be a criminal background check issued by the state police or from the local police. So, for example, if somebody has committed a crime in one state and they get a criminal background check from another state, it wouldn't necessarily show up. Last night, I was reading some internet posts that Mr. Neal posted under a pseudonym on a popular ESL website. And he, in fact, has taught in a public school, and he actually forged a criminal background check according to what he wrote on this forum. And because there is such a diversity of documents available that teachers can use for criminal background check, at this time, because there's not a standardized check that's needed, it is relatively easily done to forge a criminal background check for people that have a criminal record.
So different standards, private to public, all sorts of, potential loopholes to contend with. And I guess the basic point is if someone doesn't have a criminal record, it's not going to show up anyway on any of these things, one's preferences sexually.
Well, that's true. I mean, it's from what I understand, Mr. Neal doesn't have a criminal record to this point, so even if he did get a criminal background check, it wouldn't have shown up. However, from what I've read about Mr. Neal and what I've read from his posts on the internet forums, he probably wouldn't have passed our screening process regardless, just because of his work history. We pay attention to somebody's work history as well as their behavior in the past, as we believe that's the best indicator of what their job performance is going to be in the future. Okay,
that's an interesting point too. So you mentioned that as far as change resulting from this, you're going to tighten up the screening process or move in that direction. What do you think the impact is going to be in terms of the reputation of, I don't know if it's agencies like yours, but just foreign teachers going overseas? What impact do you think this case could have?
I think it's an impetus towards the further professionalization of the industry as a whole. I mean, it's still a relatively young industry. You get a lot of young people going overseas. In the past, it was virtually unregulated. But as the market grows and as there's larger and larger entities involved in bringing teachers over, and concomitantly there's more money involved, they're looking for more professional teachers. In South Korea specifically, they're really expanding the number of teachers that they're hiring in the public school system through the government agencies, and as such there's much less margin for error.
Is this a big blow for your industry though, do you think?
I don't think that it'll have a long-term effect. I mean, this is a real tragedy for all parties involved, there's not a doubt, but because this industry is predicated upon a number of factors, including, the world economic condition, political situations. There's been numerous things in the past that have affected the industry short term, but so far we haven't seen a real long-term effect from any of the negative stories that have happened in the past.
Right. Good to talk to you, Mr. Glickman. Thanks a lot for joining us today.
Thank you.
That's Ben Glickman from Footprints Recruiting Incorporated out of Vancouver this morning. More to come. Stay with us on CBC News Morning.